Hi, Davi here, and today we have a new episode in the art review series. And today we'll be checking out the work of BaROQUE. I recently found this artist, and I do like their work a lot because they have a lot of work to show. And what I mean by that is they essentially have like sheets of drawing. Some of them are kind of just like quick sketches. Some are rougher, some are cleaner. Some have been rendered like in grayscale. You do see some colored pieces here and there, but just looking at the work, it's just so heavy in terms of like effort, and it's very inspiring. It does make me want to draw and practice too. I mean, just look at this, like these types of studies, these breakdowns, right? Now, obviously, I don't understand Japanese, but it looks like they're trying to break down the forms. They have some, like you can tell they're doing their due diligence when it comes to this thing. I do see some nice feet there, right? And also, if you look at their work, let me just go back. Oh, these are some studies of the eyes, right? I think they're studying the expressions or how different or how you can express expressions through the eyes. Jesus. So we have some shirt studies here. I think pages like these are also pretty cool. Like it's so like filled up, and yeah, I think you can achieve a lot if you. Let me just zoom in on this page. Right? It's pretty cool because you don't even have to sketch. I'm assuming they sketch from like this view where they're pretty far away because it looks like most of their sketches here are thumbnail sketches, right? They're done quickly. And they're trying to solve the problems very small and early on. And I do like their line work too. It's a bit squiggly. They're not trying to be like the super finished kind of, typical manga level high illustration types of artwork. It makes it more not realistic, but just more relatable. Maybe for someone like me, because I'm a bit more sketchy. And just looking at their line work, there is a bit of transparency. I think they're using some kind of like a basic round brush. It does have some line weight variety to it, meaning it's the lines are affected by the pen pressure of the pen. So there is pen pressure sensitivity. I think that's a better way of saying it. Um, It reminds me a little bit of the work of Cho Jang sometimes, or Wan Young Yun, whenever, because he does have a YouTube channel where you can see him like draw. His lines don't always like he's not trying like his end results are not like lined artwork pieces. They're usually paintings, but whenever he starts out his piece, he usually starts out with a very kind of rough drawing like this, and then he eventually does, paint over that or under that. I do like the utilization of the pure like black villains here. They're using some kind of textured brush for that. So yeah, there's just so much. Now this one, it's a grayscale piece. Let me just open this up. Here we go, right? Look at that. You can still see the line works and how the squiggliness of it does show through still. Or it's slightly wavy. Like it follows the natural tendency of your hand to be a bit like jittery. So now the difference with this is they do paint it, but they paint it with or in grayscale. So it's more of a value painting, value studies here. But if you zoom out, they're done again in this sort of thumbnail size. And I think this is so cool, and not just cool, but like you get a lot of practice time because you don't always have to go for the full illustrations. Like you can learn a lot by you can essentially increase your mileage by decreasing the size of your output, meaning you don't have to do like full finished paintings. You can just do like one sheet of multiple sketches, and that's how you can get a lot of like mileage out. And because even if it's like a small sort of thing, it's not like you can't paint it. You'll see this too with like traditional artists, like gouache painters or like oil paint, like any kind of traditional artist who usually paints. Sometimes they'll paint in a very small size, and they don't always see it as something that's insignificant. They actually do treat it like an actual painting. Because first of all, it's easy. It's easier to do. You can pump out more, but also in their case, it does save paint, right? So because if you have a large canvas, you're gonna have to use a lot of paint for that. The point is, I think I'm very more inspired, I guess, to do more smaller sized stuff. because you can do it quickly too, and you can do a lot. That's my point. So this one's more of a line work, right? More of a line work piece here, or it's more drawing. I don't see a lot of like. There we go. Right? It's essentially the same. Obviously, it doesn't have the grayscale sort of painting, but the foundation is still. Oh, I do see like a foot shot over here. There you go. That's it. Oh wow. I do see a lot of hatching going on here, but the proportions are pretty much the same, and this kind of shows you that drawing really is the foundation of like art, especially visual art, because like what you add on that, it's just complementary, right? It just adds on to that already good thing you've done beforehand, and that's going to be the drawing over here. So here we have a few more sketches, again in grayscale, again with the small sort of size, doing it in like one sheet. I mean, even artists like on YouTube, guys like 58MW or EO58, Leviathan, the Rajam, they like sketching in like large sheets. Although for them, I do notice like they have really like large canvas sizes. Like a lot of their sketches, they seem like full illustrations. So I think they're especially for 58MW, like they go a step further in terms of like size. I think what's their name, BaROQUE, is kind of a good sort of a gauge or artist for me to study or to reference, because in terms of their output, and not just output, in terms of their quality. Now this one, they're just practicing. I do see a lot of like circles, so head studies, but they're not. They don't even have like facial expressions. But yeah, they're just filling up sheets. It reminds me of the work of, who's that artist? I'm forgetting her name. She does a lot of like iPad sketches. Most of her work isn't 3D, but whenever she does 2D, she does sketch a lot in grayscale on her iPad. Very famous artist. I think she's also like an architect or something. Very famous one. A big name artist. But so here we have another grayscale. Again, here we have essentially just 4 major like shots. We have 2 chibi sized figures here. I think it's of the same character. One is like a full figure from head to toe, and the other one in the lower right hand side, it's sort of a half shot from her head to her bust. Right? And I think if you can get good at just the values, basically painting in grayscale, the colors, because there's always like a method to add colors once you have this in check. Like you don't have to start from the beginning. You can use the values in your grayscale painting or rendering phase to help you with the colors. So you don't really have to like worry about like basically you're playing color fill-in or coloring book, right? Or a glorified version of it anyway. Here we have another chibi. Again, look at the line works. Look at how squiggly it is. I think I did review an artist who's kind of drawing this way too. Where they have like squiggly lines. Got it. Maybe I'll try referencing it in the description below, but yeah, so here we have some more studies. And again, look at the line work. Let me just zoom in here. Right? Clearly it's a sketch, but this is where you get to like solve problems and figure things out. Whenever you're studying, you don't have to have clean lines, and that's sometimes my issue, where I feel like I can't distinguish between having to work on a finished sort of illustration and working on just like studying the thing. I think it's because I'm so exposed to so many high quality or highly finished artwork that I just like I feel like that's how I'm supposed to like study, right? And yeah, look at their line. It's not like just one swooping line. It's like multiple strokes. Something that's so random. It does look kind of messy, but it looks cool, right? And it shows you the diversity. Some artists like sketching with one line. For example, if they don't like a line, they'll immediately erase it, and then they'll keep repeating that process until they find a line stroke that satisfies them. But they want that 1 or 2 lines. But for artists like this, they just kind of they're okay with the squiggliness or the jitteriness in their line work. I think this is the colored version. So let me just zoom in. So you still see some of that. They did clean up the drawing you still see those jitter lines, but they did erase most of the non-essentials, right? Most of the line works or the lines that remain are in the contour, basically the lines encompassing like each major shape. Everything else inside is just painted in and cleaned up. I do see a little bit of gradient. Maybe they're using some kind of soft brush, right? It's darker here, lighter at the top. I like the shoes. And I think doing these sorts of like chibi, smaller sized figures, I think they're a great way to sort of help you essentially draw figures, right? Because when you're drawing something like this small and this sort of like exaggerated, it helps you not get too serious or too attached. And once you like go back to something more like this on the left hand side here, like it feels more like you're just playing with the proportions. So a lot of artists advise this, drawing like chibis or like caricatures of like people or characters, like simplifying them to very like basic forms or exaggerated forms. It just takes away a lot of the pressure. Some studies here in grayscale, but they don't have a face. Let me just do this. Very cute, right? And just the workload, the output is just crazy. Oh, let me zoom in on this one. God. Oh, okay. Jeez. Oh my. Sorry. It opened too many times, but yeah. And look at the brushwork. I mean, that's just a basic round brush, guys, with some opacity. Like, you don't need much. And I've been practicing like behind the scenes, and I've realized that you gotta simplify your tools. As much as I love my brush variety and shit, like having like simple tools, it just helps you focus more on like the actual subject matter, right? Like you can always do the whole like brush variety thing because it does contribute to your style, right? But you can do that after you've figured out or studied something. Like your studies don't have to be pretty paintings. They can be, more analytical, more plain, if you could call it that way or call it that. So these are like quick sketches of like figures, full figures, different maybe archetypes. We have the archer here. We have the axe, sort of big swing warrior. Same thing for this one. Although this one does have a big sword, this one is more of like a magician. It looks like it because they have like a staff and the hat, right? And this one is more of like the swordsman. Reminds me of Darkness from the Konosuba anime. I mean, she doesn't have a shield, but I think she does have like a long sword, I think. Well, her body is the shield for those of you who know the anime. For the heavy hitters here, this axe wielder and the big sword wielder, they were wearing very compromising outfits, so that's interesting. But I like it. I like it. We have some nice food here. Oh, looks tasty. I'm not sure what that is, but it looks like there's some rice underneath. So that's always good, but it looks so tasty. It looks homemade. I think they're measuring their food. Is this like a stove or something? I'm not sure. But yeah, look at this. Like a lot of your drawings can start out like this, right? I mean, even if it's like, yeah, a bit like sketchy, but it looks good. They've basically figured out like the major sort of parts, like the expression, like how big the character ought to be. And yeah, sometimes they do paint in grayscale. So yeah. And I like how they can, again, fill up pages like this. I need to learn how to like fill up sketchbook pages because I have like pages where it's just so random. Like it doesn't feel like a nicely done sketchbook page. Like it doesn't feel like I'm using the page right. Like there's so much white space when I do it. So we have some nice feet here. So clearly an artist of culture. So, and even their painting, it's a bit impressionistic, right? I do see some blending brushes or some blur tools being used a little bit, and they don't mind adding like white or leaving in white. So basically, when you render this way, it looks kind of like high exposure because you have the areas in light are just in white. It's not in gray or light gray. So I've noticed for anime, high exposure, basically areas in just pure white, the blur slash blending slash mixer tool, to create like those soft edges or maybe just a soft brush, and gradients. Let me just show you. Do you see this thing over here, like this area, like this whole like body essentially? Like there is like a slight gradient. It's a bit darker here, and it becomes lighter here, and then darker again here. So it does make your flat drawings look a bit more 3D, even if it's not totally accurate. Just adding a bit of that gradient, it just makes it more, adds more atmosphere. It's kind of like watercolor for those of you who've used the medium. It's very common to have gradients, and just even if your shapes are so simplified, because there's so much gradients happening, it does make your painting look a bit more like 3D, more spacious, more yeah, just more like you can go inside it. What? Let me just delete this. Or so we have like a bike here and a car. Oh, this is the finished version. Oh, there are 3 versions here. So we have like a rough line work, a line work, or a more finished version of it, and then we have a colored version. So let me just open this or these in like its own tabs, and then we'll end the video here. I just saw this like very like recently. It's taking a while to load, but I'll try this. Much faster that way. Because sometimes the images take a while. Oh my god. Oh my. Okay, got it. So here we have the rough, the lines or the rough line work, the more finished line work, and then the grayscale for the painting. You can still see the lines from this phase, the second phase, where the line works are a bit more cleaned up, right? So they're not technically painting over the line work. So even though it's a bit jittery, the line work or the sketch, it's still finished, meaning there's no ambiguity with where the line begins and where the line ends. And that's kind of my issue sometimes. Like I like skipping this phase because I want to be all like direct and impressionistic, but sometimes that is it, like it hurts me in the process when I start coloring or adding some like values. But yeah, so try to figure everything out in this kind of level using like a small brush, and just it's just make it messy. Right now the idea here in this phase is just to figure things out, and then you do a cleanup kind of like this, and the line work doesn't even have to be that tight, that clean. It just has to be clear, right? It doesn't have to be clean, it just has to be clear. And by the way, when I'm saying this to myself because a lot of my lines don't have clarity. So, and after this whole thing has been figured out, then you can do this sort of thing. And again, I've mentioned some aspects of this sort of anime. There are many styles in anime, but for this kind of vibe, we've noticed a few things. For example, let me just write it down again. High exposure, meaning there's going to be a lot of areas where it's just white, obviously in areas of light. And you'll see this too with like colored pieces where, let's say for the skin, like the area in light is going to be white, but the area in shadow is going to be the skin color, right? And oftentimes that can even have like a lot of saturation at the skin color or shadow area. But yeah, basically high exposure. And number 2, we have some soft edges, either through the soft brush, but I think it's usually through the blur tool in Clip Studio Paint or a mixer brush in Photoshop. And then the third are gradients, right? For example, for this whole like top over here, or maybe for this woman's, what is this, like a dog or a bunny? I think they have a slight bit of gradient in the, well, everywhere, even in the shadow, sometimes you do see a little bit of that gradient thing happening where the value sort of fades very softly into another value. So gradients. Oh, and I also mentioned it just so I won't forget, because I may go back in this to this video. What did I say about clarity? It doesn't have to be clean. Doesn't have to be clean, especially for someone who sucks at line work. Doesn't have to be clean. Shit, no space. Clean. Just has to be clear. So basically, clarity over cleanliness. Not for all artists, but for for people like me maybe, and maybe for if you're kind of like me, it's okay if it's not like super clean, like your work. It can start like this, and when you like finish it up or clean it up, it can just be in this level, and then you can compensate for that uncleanliness with your painting. So hopefully you enjoyed this art review of BaROQUE. I really do enjoy their work, and I'm glad that I found it. I think I got, or this was like reposted by another artist, but yeah, I'm very glad I found their work because they have a lot more to show, lots of studies, and if you want to know what it, oh, Shark Girl, if you want to know what it takes, or what artists do in terms of their workload, in terms of their studies, not many artists show their work sometimes. Um, just because maybe they don't like to show it, or maybe it's very messy. But I think seeing stuff like this, like behind the scenes stuff, where you can see like really rough sketches all the way to like more finished stuff, not finished, but like smaller like paintings and studies. It's just more realistic, and it's very inspiring just seeing the amount of work they do. Oh, and they're using, I think, it looks like it's a pen tablet. It's not a pen display. And by the way, side note, I do see a lot of like professional like artists, like big name, or just they have a big following, and they have great artwork. When you look at their artwork, I always assume that they have like this really big, super fancy tablet, but a lot of them have very like I was surprised seeing, because sometimes they do share stuff like this where they share their desk space or their workspace, and they have like a basic like Wacom Intuos Pro tablet, basically a pen tablet, no screen display, and it's just interesting seeing that. So anyway, I hopefully enjoyed the work of BaROQUE. I will link their page in the description below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.